Another interesting point is we've pointed out, and others have actually pointed out as well, that the present situation in many ways parallels especially liturgically, parallels the break from the Catholic Church in England following King Henry VIII's schism, and how they changed the Mass, and they changed the rite of ordination after that, and so on and so forth. But there's a really interesting quote in the book, The Rise and Growth of the Anglican Schism, about what happened when they instituted this new Protestant service. And the Catholics, avoided this Protestant service because they didn't think it was truly sacrificial, they didn't think it was valid, and so on. But some of the priests who serviced them were still compromising and saying both. They were saying the new Mass, and they were saying the traditional Mass. And what's interesting is that many people today some people, and many we've contacted, are in a situation where they've received sacraments from priests who, say the true Mass, but also say the new Mass. And so they want to make sure they're not getting hosts from the Novus Ordo, of course, but only hosts consecrated in the traditional Mass. What's fascinating is this is from a book written in 1585. It could have been written yesterday. It parallels so closely to what we're saying. I just want to read a passage from it. It's incredible. And it says, she also compelled, referring to Queen Elizabeth, the people to frequent the churches as before, and according to the act inflicted a fine of 1 shilling upon everyone who should be absent on holy days, meaning those who were avoiding the new invalid service. And he goes on, and thus by force or fraud it came to pass that the largest portion of Catholics yielded by degrees to their enemies. So most of the people went along and did not refuse from time to time publicly to enter the schismatical churches and hear their sermons, and receive communion in the new invalid way. At the same time they had Mass said secretly in their own house by those very priests who in church publicly celebrated the spurious liturgy. So he's pointing out that some of these people had Mass said,
the real Mass,
by priests who said the false Mass. And he goes on, and sometimes by others who had not defiled themselves with heresy. Yea, and very often in those disastrous times were on one and the same day partakers of the table of our Lord and of the table of devils, that is, of the Blessed Eucharist and the Calvinistic Supper. So he's referring to the priests who say both. And he goes on, he says, yea, what is still more marvelous and more sad, sometimes the priest saying Mass at home, for the sake of those Catholics whom he knew to be desirous of them, carried about him hosts consecrated according to the rite of the Church, with which he communicated them at the very time in which he was giving to other Catholics, more careless about the faith, the bread prepared for them according to the heretical rite. So it's fascinating that he could write that. He's saying that these priests would administer the validly consecrated host to certain people, and the invalidly consecrated host, the same priest, to other people. And that could have been written about many indult situations today. And it just shows you how clearly the liturgical revolution after Vatican II parallels the liturgical revolution of the Protestants. Another thing that we could talk about in this program is we want to talk maybe a little bit about Martin Luther and his revolt from the Catholic Church. Because when you really get into, the specifics of the revolution of King Henry VIII or Martin Luther from the Catholic Church, and you read the blow-by-blow accounts of, what they did, and you dig into it and you see how ridiculous and absurd and outrageous it is for anyone to follow these religions. It's just astounding. And so actually, we may talk more about that in the next program.
Yeah, and so we'll be posting, in the future, when our next program will be on. Next time it will be appearing on our website. Thanks.